Okay, that should be me live. Let's see, make sure. Better. Okay. Okay. So let's begin with this. Oh, yes. Make sure this isn't actually doing wrong things right now. Roll back. No, I do not want to roll back that. I want to roll back this and this. Patch. Work on consumers. Yeah. That gets rolled back. Okay, Couchbase unit work. This one did change. Okay. So, getting started. So Couchbase looks like it is a viable platform. It's definitely usable for what I need. But in reality, I don't have the time or really energy to become an expert on Couchbase right this second. My only real dev time is these 2 hours before I begin work, and any other time is extras. And doing this sort of research, struggling through this sort of research on stream will invariably turn people away, no matter how interesting it could potentially be. So rather than spend vast amounts of time trying to debug and challenge Couchbase, in the interest of treating this like a real product and making actual progress, I am going to make the decision to put it on a shelf right now. Not scrap all the code. I'm not going to do that. But put it on a shelf and come back to it in the new year. Maybe I can get some time with someone from Couchbase. Maybe Matt would be kind enough to give us a bit of a guide, or maybe we can help them improve their documentation for new developers coming to the platform. Right, working with it in a SQL way. Right, because where it's struggling is I'm trying to create this collection and I was adding the primary index and it was failing. Right, so my initial code on that looked like just wait until it finally adds it. Right, so keep delaying until the collection exists. So then I'm like, well, we don't want to do primary indexes anyway because that's not the production concern. So let's go and add an index. Right, so I said, wait, well, collection exists, and then create the index. And even this failed. And I couldn't find any good documentation on the SDK as to how to create an index or things like that. So I think for now, in the interest of, again, making progress on tickets, getting the actual concepts of the application moving forward, the more pragmatic approach here is to make this SQL based just the same way as everything else and move forward in that manner. So I'm not deleting this code. I'm not removing it entirely. I will put it to the side purely because I think I do want to come back on this. I definitely do not want to lose the things that I have got here because as far as working with Couchbase, I think there's definite workable patterns. So let's close that. Let's close that. So for right now, I'm going to check out that as a new branch. What's this going to be called? It's essentially stash. Couchbase tickets. Okay. So we'll have a branch set out there with the Couchbase ticket stuff on there. That's not going to go away, but now I can push that, obviously. I don't want that just sat on my machine and then all of a sudden realize, oh no, I lost it all. And now I can check out development and begin work on switching out for SQL Server. So let's go to here. Move items to SQL Server DB. So this one kind of goes back to open. I started the sprint 2 weeks ago, I believe. It doesn't actually track because this doesn't have the concept of. So this is more Kanban than it is sprint. So calling it a sprint is. Oh no, new sprint. You can create a sprint within a board. Huh. I guess we'll do that in the new year then. So that's not a board. That's general work. And then I've created it. So, our organization is strange. Oh well, we'll worry about that in the new year. Okay. So this goes to a board. This might actually represent some of the ideas that I actually do have. So move work items to SQL Server DB, right? That is what I'll focus on for today's stream. I think I can pretty much knock it out in the stream. T24, move work items to SQL Server. Because again, we've not got a lot of stuff in there. This is an easy decision to make and an easier piece to do. So go to scripts and let's do another folder. We'll call that work items right now. And again, that may evolve over time. We may get to a point where that is not just tickets. It might be everything. It might be just tickets, right? It might be a support system rather than work items, right? And things get promoted into different systems. So there's definitely a chance to have that evolve. Sorry. So we don't want to create a class there. So the way I've done this so far, right, is I've created a user and created a role, and then each piece of the system, I create the. Do I not have to create databases? Yeah. Seems I do not. Would be useful, probably. And I number them in order so that I can actually potentially have them run in sequence. Dogs are not unsettling today. Okay, so let's go and add a new file, 001 work items.sql. So I'm going to actually use this create database ls.work items. I got some naming conventions that I really need to start working on. So new database ls.work items. Doesn't need tenant because tenant is nothing to do with that specifically. That should be it. All right. Right. So this is use work items. So this is just adding our highest level user in for that login, so we can use the user on the actual system. Ultimately, again, reviewing these would mean we add the right levels of user privilege in later on. Okay, so that's that. So now we need to create the actual files. Hey Delta, how you doing? Good morning. So hard part is I don't actually have the structure to work off of. So I'm actually going to create the tables the first time. So let's do it. Database ls.work items. DevOps guy wants some tests tied to our DB schema. Any idea how to get that? Tests tied to DB schema. Well, those are integration tests. You could use sorry, I'm monitoring puppies being pained. No, unit tests aren't the answer if you're going to actually do SQL database testing. What sort of tests? Like actual integration tests for your code, or actual running scripts or running queries? Like benchmarking sort of things? Guess it would be either integration or end to end. Yeah, it depends on what they're trying to uncover. I apologize, but the dogs are being they're energetic this morning, so they actually are playing, and I'm trying to keep an eye on them so they don't chew things they're not going to chew. If a DB change goes through, they should break. So I mean, it looks like they're looking for some sort of integration test against the database. So, I mean, you could essentially create like a dapper layer to query the tables, and run basically integration tests against the database. So you just run a separate library that is, does this table exist? Does this table exist? Does this table exist of queries? Well, Dapper, because it allow you to just create a SQL connection and write SQL script, right? Dapper is just a no. I'm thinking more if they have to define what they want to test, right? If you want the actual application code tested, then yeah, you're end-to-end or integration testing, right? So that will always test the database. But if they're actually verifying that the schema hasn't changed and there's, so you're trying to document the schema in tests, then maybe you are writing a bunch of tests that look like unit tests, but all they do is write a query and execute a query against the database and insert data, query data, etc., and verify that it can get it back. But it depends. they have to define what it is they want testing there. Are they looking for a broken index? Are they looking for performance? Are they looking for, hey, someone dropped a column they shouldn't have done and the application is going to break now? Right. So, you could create a separate project that looks like a unit test project, but then has queries, and each test establishes a connection to the database, inserts data into a table, selects from the table, and the test is can select from, can query from, just get if there's calculated fields, just get the right results, etc. No, so Dapper is what Stack Overflow is built upon, right? Dapper is a layer on top of SQL DB connections, and it will allow you to execute SQL, but still work with objects and stuff like that. So you can query and get objects out. It's a pretty thin layer, but Stack Overflow. It was built for Stack Overflow by Mark Gravel, I believe. You could use Entity Framework. It's just extra pieces, right? It's extra building DB context and stuff, right? It's yet more structure around it, so that's why I suggested Dapper maybe. But again, if your DevOps are wanting to test the application against the database, then you need integration tests. If they're just wanting to validate the database is structurally intact, then this would work as well, because you could just build a set of tests that are querying the database and doing everything else. So you could use Entity Framework just as much as Dapper. It's just with Dapper you write in SQL, right? So your test would be can insert data, insert into blah 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 values, execute, can select data, right? Those sorts of things. Then use Entity Framework. I mean, they can't have it all, right? Saying to a developer, hey, we want some tests tied to our DB schema. One thing I thought of was we have SQL create scripts. Okay. We could use those, build tables and test stuff. Yeah. Yeah, you could do. Yeah, again, that's what it comes. You've got to decide. Okay, they've got to tell you what are they actually trying to test, right? They're not creating a database. ls.work items. Yeah, it exists. Okay, I did create. I'm going crazy. There you go. Yeah. Well, if they're trying to validate the database schema, so let's say they're trying to run this before they do any deployments, right? So they make sure the DB schema is intact and has no issues before they actually run a deployment, right? Then developers are going to still have to work on this, because the developers are going to have knowledge of what they've changed in any given piece. So these would have to run post DB scripts, right? And make sure that the database is all valid. I don't know how we'd undo those things, but yeah. And then you could run your set of tests and validate before you even run an application against it. Well, do you want to run? Well, again, what are they trying to do? If they're trying to validate the schema is good for the application to hit, that's one thing. If they're trying to validate that the queries that the application runs are going to has slowness, etc., then that's a whole different thing. You need to be able to run integration tests en masse and with varying levels of data. So you've now got a way bigger challenge ahead of you, because you've now got to come up with realistic data for integration tests. So realistically, what you're looking at is, can I query this table? Can I query this table? Can I query this table? Can I insert data into this table? Can I insert data into this table? Or if you should be able to, right? If there's any calculated fields in those tables, are they coming out with the right value given these values, etc.? So you're validating that the general schema is of good health, rather than validating the application is going to work against it necessarily. Or do they want to validate the application's queries and that there's performance issues, etc.? In which case, you're in the integration test world, and that's a lot of stuff to do. Dapper is faster than EF. Dapper is used on the read side of the CQRS implementation, is very flexible, multiple query, etc. EF core mostly right side and checking optimistic and corrosive. Yeah, that is a common use case. Good morning, Essa, by the way. Or good day, sorry. My assumption. Yeah, it's quite common. And the only reason I haven't done that sort of stuff is because right now I've got way too many layers and stuff. But I have been looking at doing it that way. Seems unlikely we adopt Dapper then. Or we already know EF and implementing CQRS is too difficult at the moment. Right, if your application infrastructure isn't supportive of that, then yeah, that's a little bit harder. But again, you don't necessarily need that for what they're asking. It all comes down to what are they actually asking? We want tests against the database is great, but specificity. Don't just drop something in someone's lap and walk away, right? Okay, so I need to update you guys on some changes. I want no more PR reviews, and this is my method of getting there. Yeah. Just give him something. It gets you away from everything else. There. I'm hoping that dog is chewing. I'll be right back. I've got a bad feeling my dog is chewing the floor. I'll be right back. Okay, that should switch me back. Oh dear. I have one less patch of floor. And a dog that looked very guilty. Okay. Um They're going to be challenging today. I know it. Okay, it's punishment. So, moving on. Context. Couchbase. I'm not giving up on Couchbase. I kind of started the stream, obviously. I don't think you guys are in here yet, but I'm not giving up on Couchbase. But what I need to do in the use of the word pragmatic, right? I need to move forward with this project, right? I cannot afford to spend stream after stream struggling and researching Couchbase, what techniques I could use, what challenges I'm going to come up against, etc. It just right now is not doing what I want it to do. It achieves the data separation, but I'm struggling with the design, and I'm struggling mainly with the actual implementation. So the problems we were actually hitting yesterday were actually Couchbase throwing up on trying to create indexes, right? So being that my data right now is not heavily reliant upon a document DB schema at all, I'm going to move all this to EF Core. I'm going to create a SQL database, put it in SQL for right now, right? It moves me on with the concepts, and it will get us moving forward as a stream. I can actually present more about what I'm doing rather than actually focusing on the technology. So, what's the alternative? Oh, we want CQRS Sol already, but we have to find out aggregates first and find time to redesign the code based to aggregates. Then so you could be going domain driven first over CQRS. They aren't one in the they aren't one and the same. No. They are often intertwined, but they're not. They don't necessarily overlap. You can move to a more CQRS-based architecture without actually understanding the aggregates, and it might actually help with understanding your aggregates. But it's why I'm not trying to do DDD, right? Having spent hours looking through all these videos, all these blog posts, etc. My actual thought of this is I'm never going to get it right, so I'm not going to try. Right? I'm not saying I'm not going to try and use technologies. I'm going to use technologies. I'm going to use patterns where I see fit, and when something appeals to me and I can apply it, then I'll do it. Right? Do you mean hexagonal or DDD? In terms of what I'm doing, or what you're not doing. I'm not trying to. Well, I mean, it should be clear. I'm not trying to apply any architectural patterns here. I'm doing what I feel comfortable with, but I'm not trying to do DDD, right? And I'm not event sourcing and event streaming, etc. Right? Having been overwhelmed with reading and reviewing and looking for someone who gives an example of what an event actually is in all of this content, right? What do you call an event, right? People like this guy, right? Who I have his book sat down next to me on domain driven design, right? Who now says that book isn't what he would write again. I think you hit on a difference in expertise between me and TVD. You understand event sorting and CQRS more than me. I know DD and hexagonal more. Well, this is the problem with being a generalist, right? I do understand core concepts, but I understand when I'm confused and when I'm not going to do it right. Right? I'm not going to hit someone else's definition of what right is. So I would say I understand. I touch on all of them, and that's why I don't really fit coding into a necessary architecture, I suppose, you know, some of it looks a bit more like clean architecture, based upon what I've looked at clean architecture. But I'm not mimicking that. I'm doing my own thing still, right? And I try not to look at exact implementations if I'm going to just do my own thing anyway. Yes, ubiquitous language should form anyway, and you know, I've always harped on that, right? Being consistent is that part, right? That's making sure I'm using the right terms and I'm not confusing myself. Things like, oh look, there's a, you know, I call it handler here and I call it receiver there. That's poor practice, right? Having the right language to the business and to in the team is important. But one of these videos, I think it might be this guy, you know, dumps on everything, right? Dumps on hexagonal, dumps on, you know, it, each video, each article has a slightly different approach. Funny context, I think you understand also. Yeah, invariable, I will do. Yeah, aggregates are difficult because, and I still hold to the fact that when I go through this system, those aggregates, because I become more of a subject matter expert as I build this system out, right? I am invariably going to become a subject matter expert in the form of what this application does. Aggregates may become way easier to see, right? I don't think aggregates are something you can sit down without any domain knowledge and understand. Right? And I think that, so that's why I'm not trying to do domain driven design, is because I do not understand the domain well enough. I understand what I'm aiming for. I understand the general concepts, but I'm going to hit all sorts of challenges along the way, right? If I don't design far enough ahead, right, I'm going to, or don't plan far enough ahead, I'm going to hit all sorts of issues with, yeah. I think the idea of not mapping your code one-to-one with the tables is a thing, though. Yeah, that's definitely, right now, everything's going to map one-to-one, right, because the objects are being stored. But it is, aggregates are difficult in that they are not, and that's why they're hard to unwind, because they are not necessarily a thing, right? They're a representation of a thing, but they are the sum of their parts. So, and that's kind of in the name, right? An aggregate, right? So it's understanding what in your system is a concept and what in your system is an actual data object, and being able to unwind those two things. Oftentimes what we end up doing, and this is why I don't like controllers, by the way, if you have controllers, you tend to create buckets to fit into naturally, and you don't question whether they actually fit, right? What am I actually referring to here, right? If I'm referring to a tenant, you know, and a tenant here, essentially, a tenant is not just a name, right? A tenant is an associated address and the users attached to it. That's the tenancy, right? Yeah, yeah. There's definite approaches to doing it, and you know what works. Yeah, but again, naming, right? In my world, I wouldn't name anything user list or user permissions. I'd call that users and permissions, right? So maybe I wouldn't naturally associate those things. Yeah. Um, but again, I'm done with trying to fit what I do into someone else's design of what it is, because I will always get it wrong, right? Someone will always come along and say, that's wrong, you're not doing it right. Like just a list of articles here, right? Here, this is not event sourcing. Now all these articles say they're event sourcing, right? So they all believe they're doing event sourcing, but it's event streaming. And this is someone who is, this repository is Oscar Dudich, which is, I think that's Dudich, who's a co-maintainer of Martin and actually worked on Event Store DB, right? Actually, Essa, I believe, linked that in the Discord the other day. So that is, I think actually on my random ramblings of, yeah, if you look in the Discord, if you look at the development channel, Essa replied with the critter stack and then this link, so it's in there. It's very useful, but it's given me so much food for thought that I think I'm a little overwhelmed, and now I'm kind of more on the world of, I'm not going to do anything. If I actually stop and try and mimic some of these things, I'm going to get it wrong. So what we'll do is we'll go forward with it as is and see what applies afterwards, right? Where do we need these things? Where can we improve these things, right? I was going through with my friend yesterday who is going to start doing some development in the new year with me. So we're going to kind of, you may notice that I've tagged this one with stream. So what we're going to do is kind of go through, decide what work can be split up a little bit, and then I'll tag work that I'm going to do on stream as stream, and then they'll take the rest, the other stuff that they want to take. But we were going through it and we're kind of saying, you know, we went through the whole Kafka's an event bus thing again, right? And I kind of said, look, right now, Kafka's working for eventing for me, right? It publishes a tenant created event, right? But if you look at all the examples, Kafka might publish tenants, and tenant created is an event in the tenant topic. So there's all sorts of challenges in trying to build the system the way that someone else wants you to build a system, and none of these get it right. Like I said, this guy is wearing a t-shirt. Kafka is not an event store, because he starts with a slide that shows someone promoting the classic stack with event store as Kafka, right? And he has this diagram on his site. This is Eventuous. He has a diagram start here, and he has the right way, right? How does Eventuous do it, right? And he talks about this, right? So the edge comes into your command service domain model, into your event store, and then projections go out to your reporting and gateways to public events, etc. So, you know, this again is, if you read this and take his word at it, then it's like, okay, I'm doing it wrong. I'm doing it very wrong. But you go over to Oscar's stuff. There in a little bit, he even talks about a little bit in this video about how him and Oscar disagree on some of the fundamental things. These are two well-respected experts in this field. So how do the rest of us develop software? Right? Yeah, it's domain driven. He even says domain driven in his world. Domain driven and event sourcing, and event based systems are all intertwined, right? They're all one in his book, right? So this is, I don't know if you've seen it. This book, right? This is that guy's book, right? And from chapter 10 onwards, it's all event sourcing stuff. Right? It starts at chapter 10, and you've got about 100 pages of event sourcing. So he does consider them interwound. But he is also an event store DB champion. But so agree, disagree, dislike, like how I'm going to do this, right? Yep. I don't feel it's going to be practical for me to continue on trying to mimic other people's development, right? And it's, do I have the time? And again, I'm treating this like I would a real product, right? I'm treating this like I've been asked to develop something. Do I have the expertise to go off and learn some of those other things? Potentially, yes. How much do I study? How much time do I spend studying? How much time do I try implementing and trying to then apply to something that I don't fully understand? In a real world, if I write this code, I write this code and it stays this code. So how do I mitigate that, right? If I go off and try and mimic someone else's patterns and practices and try and implement something that I'm not fully aware of as I go, I'm either going to end up with one of two things. I'm going to end up with a system that is completely unmaintainable, really obscure to anyone else coming into it, or I'm going to end up with a system that's so fragile, right? Because I've tried to piece these ideas in and they've not worked, and now my design is fragile and it doesn't work correctly. I mean, there's obviously the path that could be, wow, I'm amazing, I hit it right every single time. You know, there is no problems with this code and it works perfectly and flawlessly and demonstrates exactly what event sourcing and event streaming is, and everyone's happy and everyone wins. But there's not many odds of that, right? Because again, I'm learning as I go. Removing Couchbase at this point is not a happy choice. It's not a choice I'm making because I want to. It's a making choice because I need to move forward with the actual project. So again, I'm going to develop this in a real way. And the reality is I do not have that skill set right now to tackle building this in this way. You know, do I have the ability to learn? Yes, absolutely. If I see some stuff and I do some stuff, then maybe I can do it. But I want to also move this project forward. I do not want to spend vast amounts of time on the stream researching, because I think that would be ever more boring. So, not null, identity, primary key. Let's add a new column, and this is going to be ticket. So this is going to be customer name and varchar 255, not null. New column, description, and varchar. So see, this is the difference between this and DocumentDB. With DocumentDB, I have no restrictions here, right? Whereas this, I do have a limit on how many characters I can put in. But I don't feel it's necessary to put max in there. That's the varchar 2000. So the challenge there is I've now got a requirement built into my database. And again, this is why a DocumentDB is a little bit more flexible, because I have no such restriction. There's some people hovering today, it seems. Yeah, I am really grateful for those links. They've got so much stuff in them. But again, that's what I'm saying. It's driving me crazy because I'm going through them all, and even within those, right? If you start going through those links, there's people who are like, "This is the way to do it," and then you'll find another one, and it's like, "This is a different way to do it," but this is the way it's done. So, or none of them will have actual examples of events. They'll tell you what everything is, but no one will actually say, "Here's an event." Yeah, and this stack, the critter stack, that's impressive to look at as well, just from a wow, just opinionated approach to things. I've got a feeling that Esther is the sort of person that is constantly reviewing this stuff, which is what appeals about this this stream. Yeah, so this is Jeremy Miller, who wrote Structure Map originally. This is a stack, basically everything. So Wolverine is a message bus, and Wolverine is kind of like if Mediator and Mass Transit got together, right? Martin is a document DB and event store based on Postgre, right? Lamar is dependency injection, new version of structure map. Weasel for database development, right? Integration tooling, like a full stack. But it's my issue with this is not so much that I don't trust that it would work, because I mean, structure map was the first DI container that I moved us to in my last place because it worked and it was fast. So I know that Jeremy Miller knows what he's talking about. It's more that this is super opinionated, right? That group is sort of running into issues with being extremely opinionated. I think that a lot of people read what other people say and take them at face value, and just they cannot go beyond what that person says, or they really hold on to it, and it's just it is or it isn't. There is no maybe we should. E.g. co-comments. The new bosses are less opinionated and hit on our opinions very much accidentally all the time. E.g. co-comments. Yeah, sorry. I wanted more comments in our code. I won't get started on that rant today. Again, if you listen to me, right, if you say co-comments, I go absolutely not, right. I have to qualify it, right. It's not an absolute not. You know, in terms of co-comments are very much a, if they're necessary, the team has to agree upon them. That's all I believe. No one person should be commenting code. They should be writing better code. Let's do this. It's going to be one of the days, I think. Yeah. Signed user identifier. Yeah, I've been there. I've been there. Unique identifier, nullable. Review date. Date time, not null. Added. Date time. Get ETC date. Last updated date time. That's nullable. Okay, so let's create that. So anyone joining the stream and hanging out, if you have any questions, if you are wondering what I'm doing, or you want to know more about what we're discussing, feel free to join in. There's no rules here on that. Okay, let's create that. That's why it says table name, because I didn't name the table. Yeah, I've often learned that sometimes arguing with someone when you have no leg to stand on, or you really, sometimes you have to be big enough to understand that you realize you've argued your way out of your own point, or you've got nothing to actually argue with. You should admit, okay, actually, I do apologize. Yeah, I'm wrong. Or if they give you some information they didn't have, say, oh, I did not know that. Let's go and learn that. Right? It's more team building than just arguing and being known as the person who is always against things and is very much this is the only way of doing it. Right? It's not nice. Right? I mean, I've ended a few arguments with colleagues where I've been like, especially if I've been leading, in that I've been like, look, we can't keep arguing about this. We disagree on it fundamentally. We're going to go my way. And they'd be like, well, then you accept the problems for it. And I'm not doing any work with it. I'm like, you work on it. That's not the way it works. You just have to accept that I'm taking the handle here. And if I find I'm wrong or we prove otherwise, I will happily do it. I will happily change. But sometimes it's difficult. Software development is not easy. Amal, how are you doing? Good morning. A good day. How is things? I saw it today. I saw the message come up in the corner of my eye. So we need tickets. We need... Doing good. Good. Good to hear. And it's not like he wants me to do and sabotage it the whole time. That's worse. Uh-huh. You've... Sometimes you've got to do things you don't like doing, right? I mean, software development, yeah. And sometimes it just takes some ability to show someone a vision or a better way of doing things. Yeah. Year-end relax from work. Nice. Nice. I wish I could say that. I have Friday and Monday, and that's my Christmas PTO. Yeah, being big enough to admit you're wrong is sufficient, right? Okay, so a tenant user has a name and ID. So we have new user, new table, tenant users. So for those just joining or catching up, right now I am moving away from Couchbase for the ticketing system purely to move forward with the actual concepts and the code. And so I'm just trying to create the SQL database and get those pieces in. The goal will be to come back around on Couchbase in the new year and kind of reflect over and see if we can learn some things about, indexes and things like that, because a lot of the code has just been tripping me up and driving me crazy the last couple of days. And I realized that my problems were not what I thought they were yesterday. They were solely based around the fact that the actual inserts into Couchbase were crashing well, they actually were crashing because the primary indexes weren't working. So I switched it out to try and do an actual index, and that still had the same sort of issues. So I'm not going to scramble anymore on that. I'm going to proceed with yep. No worries, Delta. Thank you as always for the discussion. And have a great day at work. Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to save that, tenant users. So what I'm doing here is I'm just building the actual scripts to create these tables. There's nothing worse than realizing that you've got to recreate these, so I'm trying to create them as I go. Use ls dot work items. So I'm going to move everything to SQL for right now. Again, this is not the end. This is not the last we'll see of the Couchbase technology. I'm sure that if I can get some of Matt's time in the new year, maybe streams, we can get him to demonstrate some things on stream. Yeah, that's not That's not that, is it, though? That's number 3. How does counting work? Tenant users, so that's nice and simple. And then tenant information is something similar, right? So tenant information, I think we can guess on that one. That's going to be tenant information, and that's going to be, yeah, that works. So let's create script number 4, 004, tenant information, SQL. That's that one. Let's copy this. Oh no. Oops. Tenant information PK. That's why you check it. There you go. Okay. So we have a database. We have, I believe we have, I don't think I ran that. So let's drop the database. So we should be able to recreate it, right? Is the actual goal here. I can remember I have a camera right in front of me. Sitting back and slouching is not going to work the right way. It is currently in use. Close all tabs. Drop the database. Yes, thank you. So this should be relatively simple, right? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace these components, right? Leave the models in place, right? I'm going to delete the Couchbase pieces. I've created a branch to maintain them. I'm going to put in a DB context to do what I need it to do. And then I'm going to switch out for a dependency injection piece here for a SQL DB context. And these will now just insert the record, right? Because now the tables exist. So I don't need to worry about creating tables. I don't need to about initializing this. I just need to handle, yep, I've got a tenant. It's currently in use. It is not currently in use, I can guarantee. I just don't want to do it. Whatever, I can move forward with it. Okay, so let's get on to that. So I'm going to remove Couchbase for right a second. And do framework, core. Again, this isn't something you should be afraid of necessarily, right? This is all okay, they call it context in there, okay. This is all reasonable to do. Yep, the tests are going to break. I can't avoid that. Work item context, unit of work, they go away. High specification, that goes away in that respect. Collection attribute, that goes away. Pipe extensions. Yep, that goes away. models. That goes away, that goes away, that goes away. We'll come back around on that one. That goes away, that goes away. And user, that goes away, away. Away. So I created public int ID, that table. Tenant user has an identifier. Public GUID ID get set. Right. Tenant information, same thing. Public GUID ID get set. So I'm calling them ID in here because they are the primary key of the table, but they are really the identifier. No, they were called ID in Couchbase because they were, because Couchbase benefits, it uses ID as an actual thing. I'm going to leave them as ID for now, but that might be something kind of want to reflect back over because they actually are the IDs from the system, the identifiers they came from, used as an ID in this table. So maybe it's the right thing, maybe it's the wrong thing, but I don't know. Okay, so we're going to create a DB context. This is the work items DB context. DB context. It's that. And CTOR DB context options of work item. Yeah. I hate that it does that. It's kind of fighting with how does that work? Huh. That's quite the class now, isn't it? That does not read very easily. But we're gonna go with it for now. Primary constructors and all. I do like that it gets the rest of the stuff out of the way, right? Ticket, tickets, public, DB set, tenant, user. Tenant information. That table is still one I'm not entirely comfortable with because it's one table with one record. Now, again, as more information publishes for a tenant, maybe that's actually more useful. I'm not going to worry about support ticket note right now. But yeah, that's something I want to keep an eye on. Okay, so with that in place, we have our context, we have our handlers. So we're going to have to do quite a bit here to get this to work again, but that's okay. So let's remove. So again, because of the way we did it, we didn't actually have any Couchbase implementation in here in the application layer. Couchbase was referenced in this one, but that's because it needs to inject the pieces. So the actual application layer didn't actually have a dependency on Couchbase. This is going to need entity framework core and SQL Server. And again, any questions, any thoughts, any opinions, I'm more than happy to discuss. If you feel I'm making a mistake, I also believe that is useful discussion. So please feel free. Yeah, move all that. Connection strings. So this is essentially the connection string. We just need to call this work items. And this is work items. With that. And we're going to do builder.services to add DB context, add full DB context factory, work items DB context, configure dot use SQL server, builder.configuration dot get connection string work items. Do log2 right this second, so that gives us our database connection. We are going to use specifications, so that will actually make things a little easier here in terms of these commands. So I believe we need to create, I think I create a specification type in the data, a repository type, yeah, there we go. So the way I've done this so far is, we'll worry about data later, data. We create a work items repository, right? So what this ends up being is it's actually a scoped repository to that context, right? So the context in the shared library, we've defined repository. Repository inherits from repository base and iRepository, which is in our Dallas's specifications library. So I've kind of inadvertently pulled a dependency there, right? This adds specificity onto the context, because what happens is this takes DB context and then it passes that down into these. With them as DB context, they can't they don't grab the right type of context. So you'd have to set up a binding to say, well, when I say DB context in this case, I mean this, and vice versa. So what this does is it adds that specificity to say, okay, when I get a repository in this group, then I'm going to use the work items DB context, and that's what my repository is going to be based upon. That gives me access to be able to say, hey, give me an iRepository of users or an iRepository of tenants, right? I don't have to actually now do any extra code around that. I can just inject an iRepository of T, and now I have query and I actually have insert available to me. So there's lots of possibilities there. So I kind of like this pattern. It really speeds this part up. So here, I want to go and insert a ticket. Here, I'm doing insert in all these, so let's go to the get piece first, right? This is going to be the easier one. In the work items program, I do need to add builder.services.add specifications. Oh, repositories. Add repositories. Right, and this takes a type of work items repository. There you go. So this add repositories extension basically says, oh, when you ask for iRepository, give it the instance, right? So that's what gives me that ability. So now in here, if I say iRepository repository of ticket, right? I can import those references now, right? Tickets repository, and this has just made me realize I've made a bit of a foul up here in terms of my design. So because I'm moving to using SQL Server, what I lose is that tenant identifier qualifier, right? My data needs to have a tenant identifier attached to it, right? So when I have a ticket, it's just a ticket. So I need to have a tenant identifier. So I need to modify this table, columns. And so let's do it in here as well. I don't want to lose this thing. So whereas when I'm using Couchbase, I've kind of used the scopes and stuff to scope the data to a tenant. I'm going to use a tenant identifier column on here. I kind of did some research on this. Like there is some, watch me not have it open still. No, I don't. We did some research anyway on methods for doing this. And what it comes down to is with Entity Framework, you have a few options. You can actually kind of layer it in there a little bit, so it will always add the query of where the tenant is this, which we may look into. Right now I'm going to go with the most basic approach, which is to just add the tenant identifier in here. You can use schema, so we could instead of having DBO, we could actually create a schema per tenant, which I think there's a bit too much complexity in managing that and getting connections. And the other option is separate databases. That's way too much effort for what I'm trying to do here, right? If I get this to the point of a product within the next year, say, and I actually get people to use it, nobody is going to use it on enough scale that a separate database is validated, right? Everyone's data is going to live in one database until such point. So obviously I'm dreaming big, but I'm being realistic, right? So there's no benefit in doing that when I know that I can scale it. So yeah, but we'll aim for the stars, right? So yeah, this needs to have tenant identifier. Yeah, that was about right. New column. No, you can't. In SQL Server, you cannot reorder columns. This is kind of stuck as this right this second. Unique identifier, not null. I think it added as not null, yeah. So that's tickets. What do tenant users and tenant information need, right? Tenant information is kind of clear. We don't need to have. So now this table actually makes more sense because it's actually now one record per tenant, not one record for the entire tenant, right? This one needs a tenant identifier attached to it now. So this one needs modifying tenant identifier. Let's go over here, tenant users. Oh, you can't read my mind? So work items, tickets has tenant identifier, tenant users has tenant identifier, tenant information is the tenant, so it's perfectly fine. So there we go. So now let's go back to that query. So I want to query the tickets for a tenant. What does that look like? So let's create some specifications. So here, obviously, these are now no longer valid. All that work on SQL as well. Oof. So get ticket by identifier spec. No, really? Go ahead. I don't need to say get. It's the spec. I can infer the rest. Specification, and this is going to be a ticket view model, right? CTOR GUID tenant identifier, GUID, ticket identifier. And actually that changes again because we're using IDs. Int ticket ID. So query dot where t goes to t dot tenant. Need to go change our model. This needs tenant identifier, public GUID tenant identifier. Tenant identifier equals that, and t.id equals that. What don't you like? Because ticket, no, that's ID. Oh, because that's ticket. Why is that ticket view model? Oh, ticket view model. That'll work better. Query.select. T goes to new ticket view model. So this is a way of transforming. Right. Let's leave assigned user out for right now. Let's leave that out for right a second. Ticket view model, the ID is going to be int. I don't want to get into joins right now. I kind of want to get the functionality in general back in place, and then we can kind of add in. But that would be a spec. So this now looks like that, but the query has to be int ticket ID, right? Ticket ID. And then this spec has to be I single result specification. Yeah. I keep seeing that error, right? So if I go back to this code now, that should, no. Async. Pass cancellation token. So if I take that code now works, but if I take this back and do specification, right, and go back to the code, argument is not assignable to parameter type I single result specification. So I single result specification ticket view model, right? So it's a specification of I single result, and it works fine. But I'm still not sure why, because there's a documentation that says you don't need to do that unless you don't need to inherit from single result specification. You just need to say it is of type I single result, because there's actually a type there as well as an actual interface. But either way, that should now be the same code. So overall, the concept is not changed, just the underlying. No. Remove unused directives. That's all I wanted to do. Get tickets is similar, right? I'm going to pass in an iRepository. And again, this is why I like this specification stuff. Once I actually get it working, I was like, oh, no, it makes sense. In that I kind of didn't see the benefit at first, and once I used it, it kind of clicks in, because it does make it much simpler to write readable code. All tickets spec. And again, this returns view model, so this will just do a similar thing. It just accepts a user assigned, right? So, well, this is now going to have to do more than that. All ticket spec. It's a specification of ticket view model still. right? Because the core table, right? You're starting at the table you need to be on, and that's where we begin. CTOR, and we need to do, this needs to be GUID of tenant, tenant identifier, and then a nullable GUID of assigned user, right? So this is now, yeah, that kind of generally works, I think. So we add the where of the tenant identifier. Then if we've got an assigned user, we attach the where for that. These will combine, I would assume. I'm pretty sure I can trust that. This is how I would have written it. So then we select that. So here, this changes to be var tickets equals await tickets repository dot list async new ticket all ticket spec, and that would be query dot tenant identifier query dot assign to user cancellation token. So that gets rid of that part, and this part might actually all be the same. Tickets list async. It's a list anyway, so it's already 2 listed. So I'm ordering that in memory now and not in SQL. So the other option is in here. I think I can do order expressions dot order by. Yeah, so I can do order by review date, then by added. T dot review date. What do I like about that? Let's have a look. Dallas specification order by query dot order by then by. There you go. That's essentially it. So we don't need that, right? Tickets. The rest is this. Everyone use directives. Do I have 2 sleeping puppies, or do I have chaos in my house? Looks like that was enough. They're zonked out. Okay. Moving on. So obviously I've done a lot already, right? I've ripped out a ton of code. I've switched out SQL components. You know, I'm going to continue to hit some challenges here. But let's go forward. I don't want to do a commit because it's piecemeal commits that aren't going to do anything if I have to revert back to them. So I'm just going to proceed through. So this has to change. This is going to be an int ID. That's going to be ID. ID, right? So ticket /1, ticket /22, etc. That will work now. Commands are going to be the harder part here. This part's going to be simple. So let's do add a new support ticket. So what needs to change here? Well, actually, I don't think very much. So if we add a repository of ticket, right? So let's add our ticket repository. And then I think what we do is do ticket repository dot add. Yes. Obviously here, I'm not generating that anymore. I don't return the actual ticket, so there's no problem there. I don't think there's a save, is there? Oh yeah, save changes async. Okay, that's interesting. I've always struggled with that. Like, why do I always need to call save changes? Why can I not wrap this in some sort of transaction? There's always like, tenant identifier equals command.tenant identifier. Can't forget that part, right? I saw it grayed out there. So add new support ticket. That makes that simple. I'm going to exclude this for right this. Am I going to exclude this? I'm not sure I want to do. Let's come back around to that one. Delete support ticket should be similar. This should be I repository of ticket, import references, ticket repository. Did I just crash? No. It just went away. Oh dear. Revert to primary constructor, remove that. When I've got one injection, I'm not objected to using this pattern. Especially when it's so small, the amount of work that it's going to do. So ticket repository dot delete async. This takes a ticket, so I have to retrieve the ticket. Ticket repository dot single default async await, which kind of makes sense. New get ticket spec, ticket by identifier spec. Command.tenant identifier, command.id, which will change to be int. If ticket is null, return result not found. Otherwise, delete it and return, and then await ticket repository.save changes. Oh, no. Because I changed it. Although, actually, get ticket by ID spec. Actually, does make sense, right? Because now we can do specification, ticket, right? CTOR, int ID, right? And then query.where t goes to t.id equals ID. It's one ticket. We know it by ID. We don't need the tenant identifier for this one. So yeah, this one isn't actually ticket by ID spec. And I've just kind of flip-flopped on my own thing there, so we're going to go fix that. Ticket by ID spec. Don't need the word get. I'm using it to retrieve data. Get is implicit. It's just a waste of text. There's a ticket. What don't you like there? Oh, because I'm getting a single result, it needs to be flagged as it can be used for a single result. We go up here, we'll remove that. Red squiggle should go away. It means that we don't need this anymore, right? So we don't need to scope this request because we've got an ID. The fact that we can delete it will be permission at the front end. You know what? I'm getting rid of that pattern for right this second. It just doesn't. It adds. It blurs the lines. Update support ticket. Can you guess what it's going to do now? Right. So int ID. Now, one option there actually is on that delete. Thinking about it is what we could do is actually put a behavior in front of this and still pass through the tenant, but in the behavior validate that this ticket is for the tenant respected, right? So we could do something like that. So the validation actually triggers, says actually that ID is not actually allowed to be deleted. But I'm not going to panic about that right a second. Get rid of that pattern. It's making a mess. That becomes int. So this is updating a support ticket. And again, repository of ticket. We don't need to ticket repository. We don't need the tenant ID because again, we're just updating the support ticket. We know exactly what we're doing. It's going to look like this. Right. Now, I do have unit tests around some of this, right? So this is going to be interesting. Because in theory, with some very little effort, I should be able to just swap out the unit tests with some new mocks, update some data, and the unit test should not change at all, right? So here we're going to do await repository, ticket repository, update async, ticket, await, ticket repository dot save changes async. Ta-da. Okay. Remove bad using. That's that one. We'll get to that in a second. When note is added, concern is support ticket. So all these will be absolutely broken on the floor crying right now. Right? So we need a private. Really? You think that's what I want? Nope. It's predicting what I want and then filling it in. So repository of ticket repository. No. Right. So what we actually need here is ticket repository equals substitute for a repository. Ticket repository. Yeah, that works. So if we call single default with a ticket repository for any ticket, then we'll return default ticket. Not quite what I want, but similar structure. So what we're saying is, okay, if we call this method, we should, I mean, basically we're validating that this method is called by doing this. I can do is s goes to, the challenge with this is, I've found with specifications is, what do I actually validate, right? Because arg.is Apex, good morning, how are you doing? Get ticket by ID spec. Right, this doesn't, I don't know how to validate it. So returns new ticket ID equals ticket ID, customer name equals customer name. What did I actually put in this? A deleting ticket, ticket does not exist. Returns default. It actually is that one. That's that. Well, popping in to get my stream started up. Nice. Nice. Well, I am replacing Couchbase right this second with SQL Server. So that is my challenge of the day. We just need to do this ticket ID. So these go away. Private int, because there's some challenges with Couchbase that right now I don't have the time or mental capacity really to go off and try and learn enough about Couchbase and its idiosyncrasies over SQL Server. Things like adding the indexes and stuff have really tripped me up and created some challenges. Yesterday I was trying to struggle with, okay, why am I not seeing all the database all the data created? And it was just a timing thing, right? It was trying to insert indexes and failing. Even if I checked the data, the collection was there, it failed. So I think there's some things that I probably need to learn how to do that are using Couchbase over. And after having a discussion with a friend last night, you know, we kind of went through it. And okay, he's a big SQL advocate, right? And he does not like the concept of document DBs purely because a lot of the things they're sold on, they end up doing for SQL, right? Like, you know, Couchbase offers SQL behavior, which means that it becomes relational. So what are the benefits, right? And also the documentation. If you look at Couchbase's documentation, it's very lacking because, you know, my worry is that there's consultancy services that are sold around it. So you have to really dig in and learn how to use things. And right now, I do not have that sort of time. Mr. Ranhorn, good morning. So I'm swapping out. The behavior of the application isn't changing, right? The direction of the application isn't changing. We're going to work towards tomorrow. We'll be probably finishing up the notes piece, but also moving towards adding a status, which is the first step of moving it between the columns. And yeah. And then going into next week, obviously a few days off streams. Yeah. And for anybody who is in the stream, I'm going to keep promoting this in the Discord. There is a a poll under the coding challenges area that is basically on Friday I will pick up one of those challenges, the one that gets the most votes, and I will do that on stream. And that is the goal on Friday morning stream, which will be a bit longer. I might pre-order my breakfast for that day and take a meal break. Okay, so that's that test. I'm going to go through all these tests and do these. This is going to be rinse and repeat. I'm deleting the ticket, and the ticket exists. So again, it's kind of swapping out the top part of this, right? Right, because I'm going to do repository. This becomes repository equals that. I call it, yeah, I call it ticket repository. Pass in the ticket repository here, and work item. Don't need the work item context right now. So ticket repository dot single default async arg is ticket by ID spec. That doesn't work. I don't know why you think that works. So to make this work, I'd actually have to be able to expose this as a property on that spec, which is not the design. So that's the only thing I can do realistically right now. I'm gonna have to learn more about using end substitute. Kind of do prefer it over mock, to be honest. All things aside. And this returns a new ticket, ticket ID, right? So this should say ticket repository received delete async arg is ticket with ticket ID and arg, just fill it in, there you go. So it did receive that. What else are you complaining about here with saying ticket ID? When ticket is added and is assigned, right, again, we have a ticket repository. So I'm just going to copy that piece over. And ticket repository equals substitute for ticket repository, ticket repository dot when dot add async arg any ticket do result equals that ticket, right? So we're going to capture that was called, and then we're going to pass in the ticket repository. So the one thing I do want to validate here is that the ticket was saved, right? I don't like doing this. Ticket was saved. Again, this is something that always feels a little bit messy, but dot received save changes async arg any translation token. So it's okay to say that we called add, because this will validate the fact that we added. I don't need to explicitly say ticket was added, but the fact that we called save is important. If I didn't hit save, then it would be for naught. So yeah. So we're going to do ticket repository is that, and then ticket repository dot when arg any ticket, capture the ticket, add async, then arg. We capture the ticket, ticket repository, and again, fact ticket was saved. Ticket repository got received. Yeah. What happened to the syntax highlighting? I don't know. I don't realize that I've now got red parens. What don't you like using somewhere? And ticket is updated, right? Same thing. Replace them two with that one. That's that one. Replace that with that. Ticket repository. Again, this just should be highlighting the fact that I really am not doing even though I've changed out the entire technology, the actual structure of what I was doing was consistent enough that my tests are not. I'm not changing the structure of my tests here. I'm not changing the actual validity of the test by doing this. So, ticket by ID spec, and again, I can't validate that, so I have to do that. And ticket is updated. Use that arg. Right. Deleting ticket. Ticket by ID spec. Any. Ticket was single default. Oh, there you go. Oh, because it doesn't take a. I was telling it to take a ticket and not ticket by ID spec. Okay. Ticket ID. So we need the ticket ID again. Private int ticket ID equals 2001. I just do that so that it stands out, right? As far as the data goes, again, I don't like using dummy data. And then here we do ticket repository. Here we do ticket ID. That's enough. Again, now I have the ID here. I do not need a tenant identifier. So that's why that's there. Should be able to remove that, and that compiles. So when note is added is a little bit harder. The structure isn't very, very different, but the actual code is. Let's do new table. Support ticket notes. Actually, we've got ticket notes for a second. Everything's a support ticket until it's not. New column. Again, for those joining, if you are joining and wondering what the heck I'm doing, if you are, looking and thinking, oh my goodness, what actually are you doing? Feel free to comment and join in. I appreciate any feedback. Brain, hello. Support ticket note. So on here, I have a ticket identifier. This is no longer the ticket identifier, right? This is going to have an ID. This is going to be a link to the ticket ID, right? Which does mean afterwards, navigational properties will become a thing, because again, I can use those within specifications to actually say, oh, now include. So if I include the support ticket note, I can include the ticket that it's attached to and pull that information. So it does give me some more options as well. So let's go here. We have ticket ID int not null, column content and varchar. I'm gonna go max for now. Again, it can't be null. Have to have some content. The user identifier. I have left tenant users as the key is the user. Sorry. It's a unique identifier for the user, so yeah, that does make sense. User identifier. Unique identifier. Not null. New column. Date added. Date time. Not null. Default expression. Get UTC date. So we should be able to copy that. Save that. So I could put tenant identifier on here at this point, right? Because it is a note for a tenant, for a ticket in a tenant, right? But the tickets themselves have a tenant identifier. So if I link back to a ticket, then it invariably has a tenant identifier. So I don't need to keep repeating tenant identifier across the place right now. Later on, I might find that is a mistake, and that's okay. 005 ticket notes .school. So that's going to be use ls.work items. Go create table ticket notes. Okay. So again, I'm just capturing the SQL there to make sure I don't forget it. So ticket notes are going to be add note for support tickets. So again, this is going to be an I repository, sorry, of ticket support ticket note. We need to go back to our context actually, because I don't think I added this. And I'm going to rename this at this point. Ticket note. Purely because it's redundant at this point. Support ticket notes versus what other ticket notes? It's a ticket, so it's a ticket note. So it's just adding wordage for the sake of wordage. Add note for ticket. So here we don't have a ticket identifier anymore, we have a ticket ID. We don't need a tenant identifier at this point. We do need the user identifier. So this changes slightly in that this is going to be ticket note repository. I'm being very explicit there. Okay, man. I'll see you soon, Apex. Thank you. Appreciate the log. So 2 ways of doing this. We can validate the ticket first, which let's just add it and see. Async. Why is my syntax highlighting all wacky? It's completely lost the plot. Is it because there's so many issues in the code that it doesn't know what it's doing? Ugh. Await. Save changes async. Return success. There's no failure case here, right now. Let's remove the bad using. When the note is added. So let's just fix this part first. Public I repository of ticket note repository. Then we go down here. We say equals substitute for that, and then ticket note repository. When add async any ticket note arg dot any cancellation token, do that. Something like that. The substitute. That should work. Click in there. Pick repository dot when. Repository. Substitute. That's not that anymore. That's repository. To name that correctly. Substitute for iRepository ticket note. Breaking something, I don't see it. So that is that. It doesn't like it. Why don't you like that? So when is an extension method loaded by endsubstitute? So it shouldn't actually have a problem with it. Public int ticket ID equals 1001. Remove when used. Result dot ticket ID. Ticket identifier. Result dot ticket ID should be ticket ID. That goes away. That goes away. I was simplifying it, if nothing else. I'm just wondering why this is. So, in theory, ticket ID, that's the only problem we have now. So let's comment that out and let's see if I can rebuild it. Ticket note repository dot when repository dot add async arg dot any ticket note arg dot any arg dot, it's my ordering of curly of prints. That's the problem. Dot do info is result equals. So this is just capturing that when that happened, and this is in the arrange because it's the best place to do it. I could put it in the act, but yeah. Well, from the unit testing style that I have, this kind of works. Okay, so we have replaced SQL, and this is now new command. ID, customer name, description, review date, right? That's patch a ticket, so that no longer needed. Request ID here should be an int. That will fix that. That should be int. The delete, similarly, that should be int. That should be int. And this should be new command. There. So in general, we have not completely broken a system, right? There's a few little pieces that I can fix up and clean up here. But in general, I haven't broken the overall system. In theory, I start this up, I go and create a ticket, and it inserts pretty much flawlessly. I'm pretty sure these tests will run. That will be difficult to do unless I can compile the entire project, which is why I've done that. But I am out of time for today. Hopefully for those watching, this wasn't too much of a disappointment in terms of progress on the project, but it does allow me to move forward with the actual design now and start talking about other things. And if the technology is of great importance, if you've even watched me for a brief amount of time, you know that I'll be on a different technology soon anyway, because it's always worth exploring. But I don't want to bog down the progress in the project, purely because I can't get over that Couchbase challenge, and it feels like a failure, but it will work out as a success in the future. I'm pretty certain. So for now, that is going to be it. I'm going to raid over to Apex because that's where I'm heading anyway. And Apex is building a game, which is really interesting. He's using Godot and C#. So yeah. So thank you very much for joining me. I will be back tomorrow with more of this, actually with this working and fixed, and moving on to adding the concept of status to these tickets and growing a little bit more. So yeah, thank you for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of your day. It's been fun. And yeah, let's go see Apex. I can actually find his channel. Not running. Oh, is he not running yet? Thank you, Mr. Anhorn. Appreciate it. He's not started up his stream. Not productive. Actually, let's go to full stack. So full stack is actually streaming as well. So let's go to full stack live, and then he's doing DevOps stuff. That is always pretty interesting. So thank you all. I'll see you again soon. Take care and have a great rest of your day.